Manners maketh man. What is up, everyone, and welcome to Men vs. Movies. I'm Griffin, as always, and today I'm going to be giving you my proper review of the sequel to one of my favorite films that have come out in the past, 5 years or so, Kingsman, The Secret Service. I'm talking about Kingsman, The Golden Circle. So Kingsman: The Golden Circle is directed by Matthew Vaughn. He's coming back from the first one, and it's starring essentially everyone from the original one, plus some new cast as well. We've got Taron Egerton, Colin Firth, Mark Strong, and then the newcomers, Halle Berry, Channing Tatum, Jeff Bridges, Pedro Pascal, and Julianne Moore as the villain. So the story this time around is that the Kingsmen have been destroyed. The organization has been blown up, as we see in the trailers, by the evil drug cartel lord Poppy, played by Julianne Moore. And so the Kingsmen must band together with the Statesmen, which is essentially the American version of the Kingsmen, in order to save the world. That is essentially the overview of the film, and I was very excited for Kingsman: The Golden Circle. As I mentioned, the original is quite the favorite of mine, and I had high hopes for this sequel because I wanted it to keep the spirit of the original but expand the lore and mythology a little bit. And from the trailers, it looked like it was going to do that, and I am very happy to say that it absolutely delivered on everything I was hoping for. This is exactly the kind of sequel that I wanted from Kingsman. All right, so let's dive into this, talk about the positives and the negatives. So the first positive here, and this is probably a no-brainer, the acting across the board is terrific. Taron Egerton owns the role of Eggsy. I have to say he's actually better in this one than in the first one. And maybe that's because he's matured a little bit in the role and the character as a whole has matured. So there's a lot of different elements working towards him achieving a better performance in this film, and he absolutely nails it. This kid is fantastic. I loved him ever since he first was introduced on screen in the original Kingsman and then in Eddie the Eagle. He is just one of the best young actors working today. And it's weird, I said young. He's like 27. What the hell? Colin Firth is the heartbeat of this movie. Without Colin Firth, I don't think this franchise works. And of course, if you saw the original Kingsman, he was shot in the head by Samuel L. Jackson and died. And a lot of people were shocked and surprised and a little disappointed. He just made the movie work so well. So to see him go is a little disappointing. And we were all speculating that they're probably going to bring him back in the sequel. They have to. How are you going to do Kingsman without Colin Firth's Harry Hart? And of course, Matthew Vaughn definitely took that and brought him back. And now the way they bring him back, is it a little convenient? Yes. Does it make sense in the world that they've created? Absolutely. And it's not just one of those instances where they bring him back in this one-off kind of way. It's actually a thing that is used a few other times in the movie. So on that level, I thought it was really well done. And then being brought back, he's not quite himself. And so there's a struggle and a journey there for Colin Firth's character that actually ties into the larger story at hand. And his arc was just handled beautifully. I love Colin Firth in these movies. He's so good. Mark Strong reprising his role as Merlin is just as solid as ever. I love him in these movies, and I think in this one, he's got a lot more of an emotional arc, one that is very touching when it comes to a conclusion. And so Mark Strong just delivers, once again, another incredibly solid performance. And now for the newcomers, Channing Tatum, Halle Berry, and Jeff Bridges. They're not in the movie a whole lot, but when they are in the movie, they are such a delight. I think they were all perfectly cast in these roles, and going forward, I can't wait to see how their characters are utilized a little bit more. The standout from the Statesman is without a doubt Pedro Pascal. The guy is fantastic, and his character has an interesting journey throughout the film, one that you understood where his motivations were coming from, and it ends up panning out a little bit different than what you may have expected. So I really enjoyed that element to his character. And then lastly, as for the villain, Julianne Moore, I've got some gripes with her, and I'll touch on those in the negatives, but she was fine as the villain. Her plan was dastardly, it was evil, and it was on a much larger scale than what Samuel L. Jackson had done, so that's kind of what you want from a sequel, and so we'll just get to her in a little bit. The next thing I loved about this movie is its expansion of its already rich and enjoyable mythology slash lore, if you will. A lot of that comes from introducing the Statesmen, seeing that there are other organizations out there. A lot of it comes from the different gadgets that are used. mission is on a larger scale. They're traveling across the globe to achieve victory and such. And so that attributes to an overall larger picture that's being painted for us. And I think Matthew Vaughn handled that brilliantly. Going back to The Statesman real quick, I think The Statesman was one of my favorite parts of this movie simply because they're so interesting. They're a lot like The Kingsman, but they've got those American stereotypes. They brew whiskey and bourbon and they're hard-edged cowboys. And I thought that was a nice counterbalance to the proper and dapper and suave Kingsman. And seeing those two groups interact was such a delight. Next positive is the overall story. The overall story I found to be a pretty emotional journey through and through, and that made it that much better. I mean, is it this mind-blowing adventure that our heroes are going on? No, but it's fun, it's got stakes, and you feel those stakes the entire way through. And then all those are enhanced by some of these subplots that are going on. Are there a little too many subplots? Probably, but I thought they were all tied in quite well, and they all are wrapped up for the most part by the end of the movie. And so I thought Matthew Vaughn did a really great job of weaving those in and out throughout the larger context of the story. Next, we got to talk about the action because it is just balls to the walls craziness. And I guess that could be said for the entirety of the movie. If you look at it like this, if the first Kingsman was The Spy Who Loved Me or just your average run-of-the-mill Roger Moore Bond film, then The Golden Circle is 100% Moonraker. I mean, this movie takes a lot of outlandish turns, and not only in terms of the action, but the story as well. And it all works because it's just such a fun, self-aware spy adventure. And then when they go into the action, you get some really awesome set pieces here. There's one set piece that involves Pedro Pascal's Agent Whiskey using his electric lasso. It is one of my favorite action scenes in the film. And then there's one towards the end that I'm not going to talk about a whole lot, but it is so brilliant. And Matthew Vaughn's signature style of his one-shot, high-energy infused action scenes, they're so well done. I got to commend Matthew Vaughn on continuing that in this movie. My last positive here, and I just briefly want to touch on it, is the score. Henry Jackman and Matthew Margeson are returning, and they knock it out of the park once again. It really enhances the movie, I have to say. You don't think about it, but if you take that score out of the film, a lot of the more emotional moments become less emotional. So moving on into the negatives here, my first negative has to do with Julianne Moore, as I alluded to in the beginning. I thought that she was fine, but she was almost too over the top in moments. It was almost like she was in a slightly different movie, and while I didn't mind it too terribly much, there were moments where I was like, are you in a Robert Rodriguez film or a Matthew Vaughn movie? It got to that level. Another negative I had, and I think this is going to be the most common negative that people have with the movie, is that it's long. It's a little too long. In fact, the movie probably should have been 20 minutes shorter. This should have been a 2-hour-long movie, maybe 2 hours and 10 minutes. And I think that in some moments of the film, you do start to feel that length. Granted, I'm not complaining because I really enjoy the lore and everything that's going on, but there are times when it just, you feel it. You're like, wow, I've been in this movie for a long time. I wasn't expecting this. And then I think my final negative with the movie is that there's a lot going on. There's a whole lot of different subplots and action and all these different elements that are stuffed into the movie, and it ultimately makes the movie a much bigger and bombastic sequel than the original, and some people are not going to like that. I didn't mind it too much, but I think for some people it might be a little too much, so that's why I bring it up. In the end, guys, Kingsman: The Golden Circle, is it better than the original? No, but it is a worthy and fun sequel that is a blast from start to finish. They dial it up to 11 for this one and go full out Moonraker, and for me, it just did everything right that I wanted out of this Kingsman sequel. It's definitely one of the more fun times you're going to have in a theater all year, so go see it. And with all that said, I'm going to be giving Kingsman: The Golden Circle Armored Up. Thanks guys for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed my review of Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Have you seen the film? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments section below. And while you're down there, be sure to like this video, share it with all your friends, all your spy, James Bond loving, Kingsman loving friends, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more movie reviews, movie related content. We just released a new episode of The Words Are Not Enough where we actually discussed James Bond's influence on the Kingsman franchise. It was a great time. Definitely want to check that one out. And then be sure to like Men vs. Movies on Facebook and follow us on Twitter simply by searching Men v Movies. And lastly, guys, if you like me specifically and you like what I have to say, you can always give me a follow on Twitter at Griff Schiller. All right, that'll do it for this review, guys. Until next time, take care.